We have one change to the agenda. We are going to add some appointments from the Tompkins County Public Library, some Board of Trustees folks. So we'll add that when we do the other appointments. Are there other changes to the agenda? Was there something else, Kathy? I can't remember.
I sent out a revised transfer and budget adjustment form for the Board of Elections to replace the two that were included with your packet.
Okay, great. Did folks get that? I hope.
Yes.
Okay. I don't think we have any comments from the public, but did you get anything, Kathy?
No.
Okay. Then let's take the minutes of November 5th. Can somebody move those? Mike moves them. Dan seconds. Any comments or questions or changes? All right, seeing none, let's go ahead and vote. Dan?
Yes.
Rich?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
And I'm a yes, so that's 4-0. Thank you. All right, so moving on to County Clerk, we have two resolutions. Let's go ahead and get the first one on the table, the resolution appropriation from contingent fund, terminal pay, Tompkins County Clerk's Office, Central Services, and Department of Motor Vehicles. Rich moves that. Second? Mike seconds that. Do we have someone from the clerk's office?
Alana's here.
Oh.
Alana from the county clerk's office is here.
Alana, if you're there, do you want to say anything about this, or do folks have questions? All right, seeing nothing.
Are you there? Sorry, yeah, I'm here. I can try to answer questions.
Oh, okay. Hi.
Hi.
Thank you. I think this is just a appropriation, right? For terminal pay.
Yes.
All right. I'm not seeing any questions, so let's go ahead and vote on that. Dan?
Yes.
Rich?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
And I'm yes. Great, thank you. And then the second resolution is a budget adjustment, County Clerk DMV 2020 year-end adjustments. And is the sorry, let's have someone move that. Dan moves it. Rich seconds. This is not the one that is the replacement one, right, Kathy?
That's correct. The replacement transfer budget adjustment form is for the Board of Elections, and that's just information only.
Okay, great. Were there questions on this? Oh, Henry's here. Hi, Henry. All right, not seeing any questions. Let's go ahead and vote. Dan?
Yes.
Rich?
Yes.
Mike?
Aye. Yes.
And Henry, I think you're a little frozen, but how do you vote on resolution B? Right. All right, Henry's frozen. Maybe you can sign off and come back on, Henry. All right, well, I'm a yes, so we'll go with 4-0 for now. Thanks, Alana, for being here. Sorry we didn't have any questions for you.
That's okay. Thank you.
All right. Are you there now, Henry? Do you want to vote on that one? No. All right, we're going to move on to our year-end routine resolutions.
Can you hear me?
We can sort of hear you, but I think you're still frozen. All right. Okay, so year-end resolutions, resolution regarding returned village taxes, ID 9620. Can somebody move that? Dan moves it, Rich seconds. Questions or comments? Something we do every year. All right. Let's go ahead and vote. Dan,
Yes.
Rich,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Henry?
Yes.
Oh, we heard you. Yay.
Yeah.
Thank you. And I'm yes. So that passes. Thank you. All right. Similarly, returned school taxes, resolution ID 9673. Can somebody move that? Mike moves it, and I think Dan second. Questions on that one? The gentlemen of Geo are very quiet. All right, let's go ahead and vote. Dan,
Yes.
Henry,
Yes.
Rich,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
and I'm a yes. So that's 5-0. Thank you. All right, moving right along. Adoption of apportionment of taxes for 2021. ID 9674. Can somebody move that? Mike moves and Henry seconds. Questions? Comments? Great. Let's vote on that. Dan,
Yes.
Henry,
Yes.
Rich,
Yes.
Mike.
Yes.
Great, thank you. And then we've got the delegation of authority to authorize certain tax refunds and credits of $2,500 and under. ID 9696. Who's going to move that one? Dan moves it. And Mike seconds it. Thank you. Questions or comments on this one? All right. Go ahead and vote. Dan,
Yes.
Henry,
Yes.
Rich,
Yes.
and Mike.
Yes.
And I'm yes, so thank you. Just speeding through. Okay, so now we've got some appointments, advisory board appointments. You got some in your packet, and we're adding on the library board ones. So this is for the Board of Assessment Review, Edith Spalding. Term expires September 30th, 2025. Public Information Advisory Board, Patricia Poyce, term expires December 31st, 2023. Ethics Advisory Board, Brian Eden, term expires December 31st, 2024. And let's see, I have the library ones here. And I can vouch for all the library people because I've worked with them for the past couple of years. Anthony Martinez, Don Trotter, Martha Hardesty, and Thompson Terry. I think those are the four, right, Kathy?
Yes. Terms expire December 31st, 2023.
Okay, great, thank you. So can I have somebody move all those appointments? Dan moves. Henry seconds. Any questions or comments on any of this? All right, let's vote on those. Dan,
Yes.
Henry,
Yes.
Rich,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
and I'm yes. Great. All right, thank you.
Amanda?
So, yes.
Just real quick, I think we have a couple staff here to answer any questions if committee members had them for the budget adjustments and transfers that are for information only.
Okay.
Just wanted to cover that first.
Sure. Yeah, definitely. There were quite a few. Do any folks have questions about any of the budget transfer items? They're nothing we have to vote on, but we can certainly ask questions. Rich?
I'm just curious, the explanation seems to indicate this is related to the governor's executive orders. So are all of these costs related to doing stuff basically because of the pandemic or changes from New York State?
A lot of it is, Rich. Like
Okay.
you can see postage is a big one on here. If you look at the elections, Board of Elections, I mean, a lot of it has to just do with how different the elections were this year with absentee ballots. Irene can speak to assessment, but a lot of it is disruptions from COVID.
I see like an $8,000 program expense for clerk.
Yeah. The county clerk?
Do we know which, is it county clerk? Okay.
Which one are you looking at, Rich?
The bottom of the page.
I think it's the one that was sent by email
Oh.
for the Board of Elections.
Right, okay.
Is that an election clerk then?
I'm trying to
I believe
find,
so. I believe so.
okay.
Yes, it is.
Okay. Okay. That makes sense. Thanks.
Any other questions on any of them? All right, great. Thank you all for that. Okay. All right, let's go to the legislature items. The first resolution is establishing the 2021 meeting dates, ID 970404. Can somebody move that? Dan moves, Henry seconds. Questions or thoughts about the schedule? Kathy?
I didn't eliminate one of the July meetings. I didn't know if the committee wanted to consider that or not because of the way the schedule fell. So it's just raising that for your information.
Okay. Yeah, it's definitely been a topic of conversation the past couple of years. This year we eliminated a July one. No, was it August?
It was August, first meeting in August.
And last year it was also, we did an August one, right? I think.
No, it was July, I
It was
believe,
July.
around the 4th of July.
Do committee members have any interest in doing that again? Or Rich and then Mike?
I think life went on. The county continued to function. And frankly, it gives the department heads a nice break to not have to prepare and come to a meeting so they can accommodate some summer vacation schedules that way too. I think it's not a bad idea. I know Mike Lane has expressed concern, but I think we're okay.
We did manage to make it through that time without that meeting. Mike?
Yeah, no, I think that's a good idea. I'd also like to suggest, since the first meeting of the year last year caused so many problems, we should eliminate that meeting as well. And that way, it'd be good.
I agree, except for that one we've already voted on, so that's not on this list. Sorry. We can't, we'd have to go back and do a whole nother resolution. It would be very confusing. So hopefully we won't have that problem again next year. Okay, Dan?
Yeah, I have no objection to canceling a summer meeting, but I'm going to request that we don't do it today, that allow me or anybody else that wants to take a little time, look at the calendar. And there's a couple of things to take into account, whether there's 2 weeks or 3 weeks in between meetings, how close it comes to the 4th of July holiday, that kind of thing. We usually run it by the department heads first, just to make sure there's nothing we haven't thought about before we cancel it. So that's my proposal, that we wait a couple of months probably to cancel it, or some amount of time.
Kathy?
Also, this information will not be presented for approval by the legislature until the January 5th organizational meeting.
Okay. All right. Well, so that's a month. So maybe in that time, people can check the calendar, and when it comes to the legislature, we can discuss it at that point.
Thank you.
Sure. Henry?
Kathy, why won't it go to the next legislative meeting?
Because in the rules of the legislature, it states that the meeting schedule will be established at the organizational meeting.
Okay.
Yeah, so we're just setting this up so the legislature can look at it then.
Okay. And we know the dates of the NISAT virtual conference?
For February, it's throughout the month, I believe. This is the information I got off their website. The fall conference has not been, is not known yet.
Okay, I actually meant the winter conference. Do we know the dates of that?
It's in February. They just said February 2021. They don't have specific dates. It's going to be virtual, so.
Jason?
All right.
Usually it's the last week of January, but I think what Kathy said is it's going to be a virtual conference. I think they're going to spread it out over multiple days, kind of like how they did the fall conference. Because usually it's the tail end of January, because we usually end up going to, at least if I remember correctly, it's usually the tail end of January, because we usually end up going to the up to the state legislature the last day or so. So I think they're kind of spreading it out over a bigger time.
Right, and people wouldn't be traveling for that, so.
Would you do you want me to circulate anything to the department heads now before you talk about it again? If there's any questions about removing a meeting in July or August?
Yeah, I mean, that would be great, just to get their feedback. I guess we don't have a specific one we're recommending, but if there's a time in July or August that they don't want to eliminate one, that would be good to know.
I can do that.
Thank you.
Yeah, because we can always pass it now and then just amend it on the floor.
Yeah. All right, great. Other thoughts or questions? Okay, so we will go ahead and vote on this, and it will come to the full ledge in January, and we can amend it then, or we can also make a change later in the year if we want to.
Yeah, do we actually know when the primary day is next spring and next summer in June?
I don't know.
Okay. That's the only thing, is that, since we take off November 2nd for election day, and if election happens to be on
Right.
June 15th.
Yeah, so we could check that.
Yeah, though usually it's the 20th something, I think.
Okay, let's vote. Dan?
Yes.
Henry?
Yes.
Rich?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
And I'm yes, thank you. So, Dan, if you are going to be one of the people doing some research or looking into this, if you want to share any thoughts with the committee that you find, that would be great too.
I intend to do it later today, and I'll send out a little paragraph about what I find out.
Cool, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. So we have a report that you got on via email about the 2020 conferences attended by legislators and related expenses. As you recall, last year we changed the rules of the legislature to make conference and travel a little bit more understandable, how that would be reimbursed and that whole process. And one of the things was that we would get a summary at the end of the year of what legislators have used or spent. So this can just be a conversation. People have thoughts or comments. I'd also like to ask Kathy how it was to keep track of all of this. It probably would have been harder if COVID hadn't happened and people had gone more places. But so any thoughts or comments are welcome. Or none. Rich?
I would like to hear from Kathy how hard it was to track the information. Was this a pain?
No, it wasn't too difficult. It's just a matter of pulling the numbers, from the program. We have to process all the paperwork when the conference, for the conference, following the conference. And, we keep copies of all that information. So it's not too difficult to pull together.
Do you have like, as things are happening, do you have like a program you're putting the information into, or when you generated this report, did you like have to go back and like sort through things, or?
We had to go back into the line item budget and
Okay.
retrieve the information, so.
Right, and then folks might have seen another email from Martha having a last minute thing. So I guess basically it just has to be done, like something sent in by the end of the year, or is that like, I guess I'm just asking, like, if somebody has something from months ago to get reimbursed, what's the policy on that?
Local mileage, we'll put out a notice to legislators requesting that be submitted, I think by the end of January or early February. Usually Rick Snyder, the finance director, will give us, the final date for submitting 2020 expenses. So we just need time to process that, before we submit it to finance.
Okay.
So.
And then my other question that I couldn't quite remember, when we initially set this new policy in the rules, I think we had set like $10,000 for that year. Did we increase that to this year? I guess I can't remember what we did.
The budget for 2020 was 15,000, and it's for 15,000 for 2021 too.
Okay. And then we didn't use all of that.
No.
Rich, did you have a question?
I was just going to say this, as we all know, this is a new policy where we were all given a set amount, and it really wasn't going to get tested until the fall NISAC conference to see how it worked. We were a bunch of cheap dates, so I don't think anybody went over their amount, right? So I think we really have to look at it in 2021.
Yeah, and I guess I would also say, like, I mean, again, like this year was abnormal, but I kind of forgot about the whole thing. And I guess we would need to have, if people are thinking to go to the fall NISAC and they've already used $700 of their allotment, we need to have a notice go out so people can sort of plan ahead and think about that. Yeah.
We probably should do something, a tickler for sometime in August. But yeah, there were a couple other things to think about this year besides this policy.
Besides going to conferences, yeah. All right, other thoughts or questions, Henry?
Yes, I know that the Tiger Committee we've not gone out because of COVID, but I was thinking that, next year, hopefully, we'll be able to go out more. And I was wondering how we'll be able to do that and stay within the amounts. If we have to go to Albany to do anything, because, we only went once last year, or this year. I'm not sure whether we go twice next year, to try to twist some arms and do something, or whether or Martha says that we do it virtual
Right.
lobbying.
Yeah, I mean, I think the mechanism, well, go ahead, Kathy.
I was also going to mention that I think we have fewer county vehicles available for us too, for legislators' use in the coming year. So
Right.
that may play a factor into this too.
Why is that?
The availability.
They just have fewer vehicles available to us?
From what I understand, yes.
Maybe we could get an electric vehicle just for legislators to use whenever they want it. Jason can put that in the policy. Henry, I think the mechanism that we set up was that if in the revised rules was that there would be about $15,000 in the line, and each legislator would get about 1,000, and you could use that 1,000 for whatever conferences or travel or whatever that you choose. If you're going to go over that, then you would have to pay on your own. There was the caveat that halfway through the year, we would put out a note to say to everyone if you don't think you're going to use if you've used 500 and you have 500 left for the fall, but you don't think you're going to use it, will you release that to let other legislators use some of that for reimbursement? So it kind of depends on that notice going out, mid-year, and people knowing how much that they've spent. So I guess I don't know if this is adding too much work, Kathy, but maybe we need, particularly next year, maybe we need this information to go out twice a year, like once in August and then once in the end of the year.
Maybe July.
Yeah. So people are aware of how much they've used. I mean, honestly, like I totally even forgot I went to NISAC. Like I just sort of blocked that from my memory. I was like, wow, I've used $700. So I think having people, jogging their memory, and then they're aware, especially like Henry says, for if you're going to Albany for lobbying or something like that, you might be using more. Yeah. Did you have something else to say, Henry?
Yeah, I'm just saying that because last year I know people stayed over to lobby after NISAC, but then we went back to deal with the Medicaid issue. And so I just was thinking that, okay, because again, that was done before the midpoint of the year, because the legislature's in session. And they're doing budget items before April. And so but again, since we have a virtual conference this year again, I assume that we won't hit a rate, but in future years, we may hit the rate. And so maybe we need to ask our fellow legislators earlier, whether they're not going to use their funding.
Right. Yeah, so definitely all good points. Does that make sense to you, Kathy, to have it sent out earlier, twice a year?
Yes, I think so. I think in July would be a good time to send out a report.
Great. Anne?
Thanks for letting me chime in. I was just wondering, do we have a separate lobbying budget? Because I'm just thinking like, you know, for that part where if somebody stays over to lobby or we go to Albany or somewhere else to lobby, because that doesn't seem like should be conference money.
I don't. Yeah, Kathy's shaking her head, so.
What do you guys think?
I mean, a year ago, I would have said, sure, let's add in, you know, another line for some lobbying, but I don't know. I guess we could discuss it again in a year. Mike?
Yeah, I'd actually probably be against a lobbying line just because, I mean, we're 14 people. We all have different competing visions of what should be good. I mean, unless you had a lobbyist where, as you said, this is what your job is to lobby for, and it's some kind of thing that's voted on by the legislature. Otherwise, we're paying for people's lobbying efforts, which doesn't seem to be right. So.
Yeah. Other thoughts on that?
Well, I mean,
Henry?
I guess, you know, since we're all lobbying on behalf of the legislature, that, you know, like last year, like this year, where we lobbied against the Medicaid budget, you know, we're all doing something which I assume most people agree with. But, you know, they could, because, I don't know, we're not doing something that one person agrees with, or one person goes to lobby, then yeah, I guess that's an issue. But as long as multiple people go, and it's also blessed by the Tiger Committee, I guess that would be, you know, analysis that I would bring to it.
You're on the Tiger Committee, right, Henry?
Yes, and so is Mike.
Yeah. Well, maybe I mean, if you could bring that up there and see what that committee thinks. Mike, did you want to say more?
Just that, I mean, to be a lobbyist in Albany, you need to register. I mean, maybe not as an elected official, you don't, obviously, because you're an elected official, but it seems like if we're labeling this as actual lobbying, there are regulations for a reason, I guess. So I don't know. I would be hesitant to kind of go down that path. So.
Yeah, I think I would agree with that. I think, you know, it's one thing to stay over an extra night after NISAC and, you know, have your hotel paid for. Yeah. But still, you know, Henry, you could bring it up at Tiger and see what those other folks think.
Sure, I'll mention it to Martha. We just had the Tiger meeting yesterday. I'll bring it to Martha and see what she thinks about the appropriate, because, you know, we obviously did get reimbursed this year for our legislative stuff. Whether she thinks that, again, whether we can always do fiber lobby, or whether we, you know, whether when they're back in session that we need to actually go there.
Right.
And
yeah, I mean,
you know,
yeah, I'm not sure. I guess if it would just roll into conferences or not, but it's a good question to explore. Any other thoughts?
Maybe it should come out the county administration budget.
Hey, there you go. When in doubt, just put it on county administration.
Yeah, because I was wondering, I mean, I know that Kathy sent the email about that the Face to Raise conference came out of county administration. Is that usual? Like 2 years ago, did it also come out of county administration, or did it come out of conference budget?
You know, that was a different approach. I don't know. 2 years ago, I think we might have paid for it out of our own. It might have come out of our own budget. It was a little more affordable too this year with being able to send more people virtually. Where before we traveled to Detroit. But in that instance, I mean, we did take it out of our own training budget. In an issue like this, where we had an opportunity to expand that net to more people across different departments, I'm not sure if it came out of our budget or if it came out of the HR training budget, because it included, I think we had 7 or 8 people attend from across the organization. so like a situation like that where we might send a few people, we'll try to do it collectively and find a way to do it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess there's a question of like, if a legislator is going to that, should that come out of their legislator conference funding or the administration funding? I mean, I guess, yeah, I don't know.
I mean, in this instance, it was part of a group, pricing. So, if one or two legislators went, it was part of a group pricing that was, for like 9 or less or 10 or 10 full folks. So I think it's kind of hard to separate it in that context, Amanda. And I think in this way, it was just easier and convenient, and that this is the best approach to it. If you were to go with it individually, I think it would be coming out of your own travel and training, budget.
Right.
Yeah, because I don't know whether the GEAR has a conference. And I went to one yesterday that was online. I don't know whether they have an individual conference that somebody, in addition to Anna, may want to go. And also I think about environmental conferences too, that people might want to go individually, and whether that would count against the budget that we set.
Well, I think what I'm hearing is that, yeah, it would. If you're choosing as a legislator to attend a conference that nobody else is going to, that's coming out of your budget. If the organization is sending people, then a legislator could go in with that group to get a better price. Yeah. All right, great. Any last thoughts about conferences? Thank you, Kathy, for putting this report together, and
I want to thank Katrina. She actually put it together.
Well, thanks, Katrina. Okay. All right, we're going to move on to amending the rules of the legislature. Very exciting, and we have a resolution. Rules 2 and 4, ID 9742. Can somebody move that? Dan? Mike seconds it. So we did talk about this at our last meeting. I thought I would just go through one more time and point out the sort of bigger changes that we've made. And then if folks have other things that they want to make an amendment or talk about, we can certainly do that. So if you're on packet page 20, that's where it starts. In our last rules subcommittee meeting, Dan and Rich and I talked again about the topic of a supermajority, and we decided that since that term does not come up anywhere else in the rules, we wanted to just take that out. So that's why you're seeing Rule 2 again. So it was on line 23, and we took out the phrase "an occasional need for a supermajority." So with hopes that that would make things more clear, so we don't need that word in there. Is that correct, Dan?
That's right. Everywhere else it specifies the number of votes needed for a specific action. It never uses the word supermajority again.
Jason?
Yeah, I'm not familiar with the section. There is a supermajority that's required for certain actions. Borrowing, land purchasing, I think, or land surplusing. Does this, I don't know that section of the rules. Does that change? Is that not changed by any of this? Is it?
No, okay. Right. This is just taking out that phrase here, because where those times are that you need a supermajority, it's spelled out what's needed.
All right.
I think.
That was the only thing that came to my mind was supermajority. But
yeah. Okay. And I feel like when we originally talked about this, Jonathan said that we didn't need to spell it out here, if I'm correct.
If Jonathan says so, that must be right.
What Jason was just referring to is in county law. It says you need 2/3 to declare something surplus. The other is in the bond law. There's no place that I know that they use the word supermajority, and like you say, they always spell it out, and it's almost always 2/3 where you need more than a majority.
Great. All right, so that's why Rule 2 is in here again. Then under Rule 4, you go to packet page 21. Just something I am going to point out, something that we talked about on line 23 is that legislators shall not permanently leave the meeting without notifying the chair of the legislature publicly. And we did have a conversation about this. We're leaving this in, and I personally think that we need to reinforce this with our colleagues, that if you are going to leave a meeting, that you need to say it at some point at the beginning of the meeting, or raise your hand. I think that happened at our last couple meetings ago. Anna was feeling ill, and she said to people, "I'm feeling ill, I'm going to leave." So I think that's what needs to happen, and we need folks to know that that's what you need to do. Down on line 40, we have taken out in the title and any mention of special orders of the day. Again, this was something that Jonathan said was okay, and if Jonathan said it was okay, then it's okay. That the special order of the day is actually just reordering the agenda, which is referred to elsewhere, and that's what we actually do. And let's see. On page 23, we took out the appointment policy, which was previously in this section, and we're going to add that on to the rules as its own rule at the very end. So that is no longer in here. And then we also, on packet page 24, we moved privilege of the floor for legislators to the end of the meeting. And there will be no comments.
Yes, there will be.
Henry.
Yeah, I just think, I mean, we can maybe put in that, they should limit their time. Maybe we can put in preferred 3 minutes. I just don't think moving privilege of the floor to the end really accomplishes the goal of privilege of the floor. I mean, if you want to speak at the end of the meeting when most people are gone, I mean, because again, we in fact have staff, we have other people at the beginning of the meeting when things are happening. To move it to the end dissipates that.
I hear you. I think that, and then Rich, I think that there was an example of a legislator giving a speech about opera, and I'm not really sure that all the county staff needs to hear a speech about opera. But if the speech wanted to be made at the end of the meeting, that would be great. Just an example. Rich?
Yeah, I have raised this issue before, and I do want everybody to know that I wasn't the driver for this because I knew there'd be such remarkable pushback on it. I've also suggested that we have a 3-minute limit on privilege of the floor. I believe that's totally adequate to express whatever you want to talk about. And that was soundly defeated several years ago. The problem, as I see it, is we're running meetings that are going upwards of 4 hours. We don't seem to be able to control length of meeting at all. And you see the quality of the meeting degrade towards the end as a result. I don't know if this is the right solution, but any good ideas on how to make our meetings run better, love to hear them.
Great, thanks, Rich. I would just add that whether this is kept this way at committee or not, it will be something that we can talk about at the full legislature for a long time. And I think that if nothing else, if it does get moved back to where it currently is, then it's bringing up a conversation of exactly what Rich just said, that our meetings are incredibly long, and I think our colleagues need to be aware of that and how it impacts all of us and the staff. So, Anne?
Thank you. It's I haven't been keeping track, but it just seems to me that possibly since COVID started, there has been a lot less of legislators talking, the number of legislators and the length of the legislators that they've been talking at the privilege of the floor, because, well, I don't know why, but I would imagine because we have very serious business and to attend to, and I don't think we could judge the length of the meetings during COVID. I mean, we have a lot of, issues to deal with, and you guys know what they all are. There's a ton of issues to deal with now, so we're having longer meetings for this year. I think maybe to address this, if it becomes a problem again towards the end of COVID, I also think that, I would vote for maybe a 3 or 4 minute time limit for legislators, but taking us and saying that our 2 cents is added at the end, to me, goes against what this is. And it's a legislative meeting. It's not a staff meeting. It's not whatever meeting. It's our meeting. So I would very much like to have it towards the beginning with the rest of it, and see what we can do to limit it.
Great, thank you. Other comments or thoughts? Mike?
Yeah, I would just leave it as is. And I don't particularly like a really long meeting either. And I think that the longer people talk, like I'll look at my watch at the end of the public comment and be like, wow, it's 7 o'clock and we haven't really got to anything yet. I get it. I just, the only way I could think to fix that would be for people to just not talk quite so much. I don't really see how else you get around it. I mean, you represent about 7,500 people. And, if you have something important to say, I want you to have that opportunity to say it. And yeah, the beginning of the meeting is when to do that, I think. So I would just hope that what you're saying is really, it's got to be important to you because you're the one saying it. And if people disagree that that's important, then you probably won't be in office very long. That's how I'm thinking.
Thank you. The other point to note is that now that our meetings are on Zoom, anybody can go and fast forward ahead to whichever part you want to watch, and you can go watch just the legislator comment, at any time. So I think, again, I think it's just a good conversation to have, and with folks being aware of how much they're speaking. So, Henry?
Yes. I mean, like this meeting, for example, when you have reports at the end of the meeting as opposed to at the beginning of the meeting, because I assume we don't want staff to have to stay, although Jason does stay for entire meetings, why not move the staff? Why not move the staff reports to the end of the meeting?
Yeah, well, we talked about that. And we had considered, Rich and Dan and I had considered moving the county administrator and attorney and finance director to the end of the meeting as well. Because what I noticed that seems to happen is that often we try to get through the resolutions where staff are waiting. And those, like the consent agenda gets moved up, or, this or that gets moved up, which is totally fine. I mean, that's what we should do. But Jason and Rick and Jonathan have to stay there, and Kathy have to be there throughout the whole meeting anyway. So their reports could go just as easily at the end. but that was, I think either Rich or Dan didn't want, or we all kind of said maybe we shouldn't do that. But yeah, I think, you know, there's any number of ways to do it. This is just what we brought up, so.
Well, I will probably not be supporting the vote in this because of that.
Would you like to make an amendment, Henry?
But that's my prerogative.
Yes.
No, it'll be 4-1.
Well, I think Mike said he would support it going back to, or having it be as it is, so. You're welcome to make an amendment if
Yeah,
you'd like.
otherwise,
Go ahead,
no,
Henry.
I mean, you know, it doesn't make a difference as long as I get to, you know, get my opinion across. That's fine. You know, I don't feel making an amendment would serve a purpose at this point.
Okay. Well, you can certainly make an amendment at the full legislature, and I'm guessing that if you don't, someone else will.
Yes, they will.
All right.
I can think of one person that will make an amendment.
All right. Any last thoughts about this or anything else in these rules that people want to bring up? Rich?
While we have Jason on the spot, I'm curious what his thinking would be about reporting it later on in the meeting, and Jonathan.
Well, Jonathan has such extensive reports. You know, him keeping us from going home would be very difficult. I don't know. I mean, our reports vary. I'm being sarcastic. Sorry, Jonathan. You know, our reports vary, and many times it triggers a conversation, you know, because it's information that the legislature wants to talk about. And sometimes there's a presentation and they're like, you know, Rick's sales tax reports are pretty standard, but mine vary from month to month and meeting to meeting. So there might be one where I have a few things to say. Obviously, just as a recent, every meeting has a little bit more than just, if I go pre-COVID, there may be sometimes where it's a 5-minute report and others where it might be 15. I'll be honest, after a lengthy meeting, to have us go at the end, you would probably see very, very shorter reports. Just to speak honestly, you know, if it's 8:30 to 9 o'clock at night, and it's our reports that are keeping us from going home, it's probably likely that they're going to be less.
Could Jonathan's report be any shorter though? I mean, he does go on.
He gets a second wind around 8:45, and after that, you know, that's just my gut would tell me, Rich, to be honest with you.
Yeah, well, I think that often the subjects you're bringing up really are the heft of the meeting, of what we really should be spending time on. So I'm not sure moving your report later would really do us that much good anyway. You know, again, I think the real issue is that we have some of our number that really take advantage of just talking and using up minutes, and there isn't a recognition that when you speak for a minute, you're really not just taking a minute of your time. You're taking, you know, it's a multiple, because you have about 20 people there at least, at minimum, sitting and waiting and listening. So really every minute is 20 minutes. So yeah, I don't know how we get at that. I'm not sure this is the way to do it, but maybe leaving it unamended and taking it to the full legislature is a way for us to have a fuller discussion of that issue. Thanks.
Did you want to say anything, Jonathan?
Couple things. I think whatever goes at the end, no matter what it is, tends to be shorter. Well, I did want to add one thing that we mentioned before, Kathy and I mentioned before, in terms of the rules, is that It never did, but perhaps inadvertently, it never deals with the issue of if there's a vacancy in the vice chair. Deals extensively with the vacancy in the chair, but says nothing about a vacancy in the vice chair. So it probably should say something. We amended last night or Tuesday night, the rules of the legislature to say, the change in chair and vice chair will be done by the rules. And while we extensively talk about the change of the chair, it doesn't say a word about the change of the vice chair. So I think we just should have one sentence in there, which basically says, in the event of a vacancy in the vice chair, the legislature shall vote for a new vice chair or appoint a new vice chair. It doesn't really say anything. It probably should. So that would just be a one sentence amendment to the rules, which I would propose. Getting back to the other subject, I mean, over the years, we've had a lot of discussion over, how to keep legislature meetings shorter, and nothing has worked. I will say that kind of under Robert's Rules of Order, it never kind of contemplates that there's a period of time where legislators or members of the group just kind of talk about whatever they want to talk about. And the whole kind of theory is that by its nature would lead to an inefficiency of a meeting. Now, I don't expect people to give up privilege of the floor for legislators. But if you look at Roberts or something like that, there's no place where there is something like that, and for a good reason, because it's very hard to control a meeting if you don't have people speaking on particular subjects on an agenda or particular matters, but they could kind of talk about anything. Sort of undermines the whole idea of Robert's Rules of Order. And like I'm saying, I'm sure nobody's going to give that up, but it creates a problem in and of itself. Is that how do you control that? Because, under Robert's rules, everything you say is supposed to be directed at like a motion or an order or a rule. And there's really no time where people just kind of talk about anything they want to talk about. And that sort of creates an issue of, well, how do you manage a meeting if you have that?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think the idea of 3 minutes is a good one. I guess I'm not sure how we would, even if that passed, like, how would we monitor that, right, these days? Yeah.
You have the clock.
You have the clock.
We're using.
And Kathy could just mute them after 3 minutes. Rich.
The proposal that was floated several years ago that was doomed to failure, but it said 3 minutes, but you could just request an extension from the chair. So if you were midstream, the chair could just say, continue, give you another minute. But that didn't pass either, but that was the mechanism.
Yeah, okay. Henry?
Yes, I know years ago when I was running for office, people wanted to, in fact, have an interaction with the legislators. They after their privilege of the floor, they want us to have privilege of the floor to respond to them. Right. But I know that we don't have that. It's not Robert's rules. But again, that's what they would like. That's at least some people would like, in terms of an interaction. And so, by saving it to the end of the meeting, it doesn't, because I know Common Council basically, after their privilege of the floor, will have a session where they in fact respond, or sometimes will respond to comments that people said during privilege of the floor. And so, I know that, and also the privilege of the floor does not take up that much time. I mean, it's not like we're going on for hours, the privilege of the floor of the legislators. Now, some people may go longer than you want them to go, but I don't think that's why meetings are 4 hours long.
All right, good conversation. Jonathan, the point that you're bringing up about the vacancy in the vice chair, and Kathy, is that something we can add now, or should we wait and add that when we do another round and another resolution?
I think the resolution could be amended now to add that.
Okay,
That seemed to me that would be easier. Just seems like an oversight, which was an oversight from the beginning, not, by this group. But
Yeah.
oversight
Yeah.
all along.
okay. So did you get the wording, Kathy, that Jonathan said?
I didn't get all of it, no. In the event.
If I could go back to I could come up with some wording. I think it should probably trace the language of replacing the chair only be one sentence. And I forget exactly what it says, but in the event of a vacancy in the office of vice chair, the legislature shall elect a new vice chair. Something that simple.
Great. Dan and Rich, does that make sense to you in terms of our other conversations of the Rules Committee? Off the top of your head?
Yes, but I've jotted down a note to myself to look through the rest of the rules and just make sure it fits in everywhere. It's not mentioned elsewhere, that kind of thing. So
Okay.
no problem, but I'm gonna follow up a little more.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm fine with it. I encourage Dan to follow up.
Let me speak for 3 minutes about that.
No, you can't. Actually, sure. This meeting, we could go on for another hour. Okay. Thank you, Jonathan. Kathy.
So I just had one sentence that I would like some clarity on. It's on packet page 22, paragraph 10, line 46. It's the last sentence. If it is not passed, it is tabled until the next meeting of the legislature.
Right, because
I
it
don't remember
refers.
that we actually talked about that, did we?
Well, I think because it refers to the previous sentence that,
If the motion to add a resolution fails, that resolution will automatically be placed on the next agenda.
That doesn't seem right. It seems like that sentence shouldn't be there.
That's what I was
yeah, okay. I
thinking
don't,
too. 'Cause I would think it would be, a resolution either comes through a committee or a legislator requests an individual member filed resolution.
right. Dan or Rich, any thoughts about?
Is that wording in the current rules? Or did we add that?
I
I
think
don't
we added
remember
that.
talking about that.
So too, I don't remember.
Really?
I feel like we
I do
added
not remember
that.
this.
I think it's in reference to, like, this says any resolution not set forth in the order of business. So if it didn't, no, I don't know, doesn't make sense.
So here's what it says in the current rules, and I'm starting to think maybe we just tried to rearrange it for clarity and that didn't work. Currently it says, any resolution not set forth in the order of business shall be tabled by the chair until the next meeting of the legislature, unless a motion regularly made by a member present, passed by a 2/3 total of the whole legislature, authorizes consideration of the resolution. I think that was just confusing to us. We tried to make it clear and it did not work.
Yeah, it was like if there's a resolution that doesn't make it onto the agenda because there's not a 2/3 vote, it's moved to the next agenda. But that's not what it sounds like here.
I would think it would be left up to the individual legislator
Right.
or a committee to bring a
Yeah, the
resolution
old
forward.
language isn't accurate. It's not tabled. I mean, it just doesn't.
Nothing happens. Yeah,
Yeah, it just doesn't get on the agenda. I mean,
right.
it's not tabled. So the old language just really isn't accurate.
So we should just cut that sentence.
Yeah, I think if you just cut that sentence into new, I think it ends up being correct.
Okay, Rich?
I would move to strike that sentence.
Okay, which is on packet page 22, line 46. If it is not passed, it is tabled until the next meeting of the legislature. Does somebody second that cut? Dan? We have to vote on that amendment. Okay, any other discussion about making that cut? All right, let's vote on that. Rich?
Yes.
On the amendment? Yep. Henry?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
And I will say yes. All right, so that is cut. Hopefully that will make more sense. Anything else on other sections or parts of the rules? Questions or comments? All right, then let's go ahead and vote on this, and it will go to the whole legislature, and we will have another long discussion about how much we all talk. Rich, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Henry? Henry, are you there?
No.
Dan?
Yes.
No.
Gotcha, Henry, thank you. And I'm yes. So, great. Look forward to more conversation.
That's basically why I moved it, just so everybody knows. We'll get it to the floor and we'll see where we are.
Yes. All right, thank you for all the input on that. All right. All right, so the only thing I wanted to report as the committee chair, I sent an email a while back, but Annette Birdsall, the director of the library, is going to be retiring, I think in May, and there's a few of the trustees and some staff are going to start working on the search for a new director. I'm going to participate in that, and I think we're going to start working on setting some dates and sending out some information this month. So if you know of any great library directors, send them our way. And that's all I have. Let's go to Jason. Anything you want to tell us? You have 3 minutes.
All right, I'll go quickly. I have been asked to join the TCPL director interview panel, so look forward to participating in that process. The only other thing, two things I want to update you on. We are going through our density reduction planning right now internally. So we have 3 people from the planning section of the EOC that are working with departments. Many departments have already implemented it. So for example, my department, we have three people that are working remotely and rotate in on odd days, so that we have really reduced our density probably by 50% at any given point in time, but still have them coming in to ensure that there's communication and contact with everyone. So different departments will look differently, and we'll probably keep that in place for a good part, probably well into next year, and then we'll play it month by month, probably once we get to the spring, to see how things pan out with the spread of the virus. But I did check in with some other counties. Some are doing something similar, some are not, but just to see what they were doing. It's been well received, and some good feedback from departments that are taking it seriously and proactively. I expect in the next 2 weeks, we'll probably have it figured out and people will be into their reduction plans and their density will be reduced. The other thing we're working on, kind of geo-related, is a requirement under New York State law, which was passed, a pandemic preparedness plan. The state created some broad criteria for us to, requiring us to prepare a plan submitted to them by April 1st that it's a plan of operations in the event of a declared public health emergency for a communicable disease. It has to do with us identifying what essential employees are, remote work options, and so on and so forth. It's not far off from the planning we've done already. There are some nuances that the state has, but that same team is working on this, and we'll probably have something drafted. We have to also, per the law, require that the unions review it and provide an opportunity for them to have comment on it. So we'll probably get them something by the end of January, and then finalize and submit it to the state by the April 1 deadline. That's all I have to update you on.
Great, thank you. Questions, Henry?
Yes. Jason, during a Cornell open house, open forum, I confirmed with Joe Molina that they will continue to do less density things in the spring. And he said they were under 50% guideline in terms of their density policy that they were implementing. So
yeah, I have had some conversations with Cornell. Some of the reduction is department specific, obviously, based on whether they're doing in-person teaching and other elements. It's not too far off, I think, from what we're doing. Some of the challenge. So what goes along with our density reduction is we have to make some technology investments. So right. Believe it or not, there are some people that still have desktops. And we have to replace. It's right next to the rotary phone, right? So we're replacing quite a bit of desktops with laptops to ensure that folks can work remotely. So that's being phased in. I think we purchased something like 35 laptops last month. We have a whole slew that we're purchasing now, and then we have another group that's purchased for the new year. That will help be able to do it. And then there are some. Because DSS has separate databases that tie to the state, there's some nuances with that. There are some positions that have field work, so we're looking at different approaches to field work as well. So I mean, there's a whole variety of gamut as to how we minimize density and in-house exposure. The primary reason for doing this is to ensure that if there was an exposure in the office, it wouldn't wipe out a whole division, department, or floor. And I think we've been doing this to a certain extent. The difference between this and what happened in March is in March, we just sent everybody home, right? And a lot of people went home for weeks without working because there either was no means or we didn't have the structure in place to do it. We're in a much different position now where, at least for a limited period of time, you can work successfully remotely. We're also seeing negative side effects of working remotely. Which has to do with disconnect, communication, challenges in supervision. So when you think about remote work pre-COVID, it was really kind of almost a benefit or a privilege, and it allowed some flexibility for folks if they, particularly from a commuting perspective, if you could work remotely a day or two a week. When you get in above, and we've done some research on it, when you get above the 2.5 day mark, when you work remotely, there becomes certain disconnects in the line of work that we do. That's not the case in all industries, but for a place like this organization that has a culture to it, in-person contact is important. You also lose things like mentorship and other things in it. So we're trying to balance all that while at the same time balancing the pandemic and risk, which is why we've created almost a cohort system per department so that if one cohort were to get exposed, it doesn't necessarily impact other cohorts.
Great, that makes sense. More, Henry?
Also, do you have any idea of when the governor is going to not allow us to meet remotely?
No, but I can tell you, I think it was just extended again to the end of this month. The remote meeting executive order. My guess, to be honest with you, is that that's not going to change until the fall of next year at the earliest. And I wouldn't be surprised that if there is some ability to permanently incorporate, some of these changes to open meeting laws. I don't know if they will or not, but there's a lot that's been learned from telemedicine perspectives, from the ability to connect with clients remotely, that, if there's a way to capture the benefits, that I think the state will definitely want to hear. People want to do that if they can. But right now, your executive order has been renewed, and I assume it'll be renewed at least for the next 6 months. It'll probably be month to month, but I can't see it ending anytime soon.
Okay, thank you.
Just sort of on that note, Annie actually contacted me about when we do end up going back to in-person meetings, if we can still, you can correct me if I'm wrong, Anne, if you're listening, if we can still, have things play on YouTube and have the recordings available, since it's so convenient now, that people can just go and watch whenever they want. But that would be really great to continue being able to do that.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things we'll start to look at next year with Dominic, as we kind of look at what to do in the future. I know, we talked about this a little bit at budget time. Jim Blizzard's willing to stay on board for another year or so. I think we need to get with Kathy, with Dominic, with our ITS folks, and talk about the nuances of recording meetings, the differences between the remote and the differences between in person. And there's been some great, I think, outcomes of this remote option, in that it's on YouTube. We've recorded committee meetings, which normally we wouldn't do. The question around production comes into play. So I know this will be one of the items that we'll want to discuss with GO as we kind of go through this kind of evaluation period over the next year.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Henry?
Well, Jason, will you still continue to do the Friday staff meetings and other thing, and the other meetings during the county meetings?
So it's interesting. The staff town halls have had a great response. A lot of staff have reached out and said, we'd really like to see this continue moving forward if we can. And it's really an easy thing to do on our end. So to the extent that we can, we will, and I'd be happy to do it. I think people really enjoy it. Lisa and Amy, and we sometimes have some other department heads on, the staff really, and they really appreciate. There isn't an opportunity where I could speak to 50, 70, 100 employees at the same time and have them ask questions and give them feedback. So absolutely, I'd love to continue to do it. The calls with the elected officials, today we had one, you were on, Henry, and we decided to go back to an every week call, just because of the increased volume of what's happening and the likelihood that new things will come from the state. They were very receptive to it. And even before this, they said, hey, we'd love to still do this maybe once a month if at all possible. So I still think that's a great idea if we can do it. I'm not opposed to it. Town supervisors and the mayors really appreciated it. They asked good questions. And if we can do it even once a month, post-COVID, whenever that happens, we'll be happy to keep it going.
Great. All right, any other questions for Jason? Thank you, Jason.
I'm going to jump off. The governor's on right now, so I'm going to get on press conference.
Cool, thank you.
Thank you. Take care.
Lisa, anything you want to tell us about today?
Just really quickly, we didn't have any policies, as you noted, probably this month for review. That we are working on 2 or 3 more extensive ones that have taken a little longer on the front end. We've been getting review by Labor Council, by labor unions and others. So hope to have those for you for next month. And that includes, I know Barb Ekstrom has been working on an environmentally preferable procurement policy, which we decided made the most sense to put in the context of our larger county procurement policy. So that will be coming both to GO and to Peak in the coming month. Another policy we're looking at is the outside employment of county employees, and that's currently being reviewed by our labor leadership. So hopefully at least those 2 will be coming to you over the next month. We've got a few more in the hopper, but that's all I wanted to say.
Great. Look forward to it. Do you have a sense of like how many policies like that are still out there that need major?
We're whittling down, but there are still a good number of them. Since I've been here in HR, we've done a lot of the bigger HR policies. There's still more to go. And we've created a lot of new ones. So that means that there are still some more out there. I can give you the exact number at next month's GO.
Yeah, that's okay. I know we've done a lot. I'm sure there's plenty to go. Rich, did you have a question? Rich?
I did have a comment on that. I just wanted to, yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm okay. I wanted to say thank you to Lisa and your team for all the work on this. It's remarkably tedious. And of course, we miss having a policy to look at this month, but it seems like you've made tremendous progress. It's worth noting all the work. It's really good.
Yeah, definitely. All right, great. Thank you, Lisa. Jonathan.
Well, again, I'm going to have a report that's shorter than the county administrators, but no, nothing to report. As the emails I keep getting while we're sitting here, I'm spending a lot of time on the new recycling solid waste center contract, which hopefully, well, we expect to be done by the next legislature meeting. But other than that, you know, court continues to be almost all now by remote. We were getting back to having more in court, but now it's going the other direction again. But nothing other than that to report.
All right, thank you. Any questions for Jonathan? All right, Rick, what do you have?
I have no report for you. No report this afternoon.
Oh, all right.
I'll answer any questions you might have.
Any questions, folks? All right, well, thank you for being here and listening to us. Dominic, you there? Do you have anything you want to share with us?
Yep, I also have no significant report, continuing to work on COVID-19 at the EOC and public engagement for reimagining public safety, and happy to answer any questions along those lines if anyone has any.
Great, thank you. Questions, Henry?
Yes, Dominic, how are the focus groups going for the reimagining public safety?
Focus groups are going well. We have, I think we're on our 4th or 5th of the focus groups that's running this afternoon, and the folks in the working groups have been working closely with community partners to fill those. So that's been going really well, and they've been keeping track of some great insights. So all good on that end to report.
Okay, thank you.
Great, thank you. Other questions for Dominic? All right, thanks for being here, Dom. Anything from committee members that you want to report or bring up? All right. I just had one last question, Kathy, about this rules resolution. Will it come to the next legislature, December 15th, or will it be in January?
My plan was doing it on the 15th, but it can wait till January.
No, that's fine. I just wasn't sure. I think I'll send an email to the legislators just alerting them to it.
Okay.
So people have time to think about it.
Sure.
All right. Anything else anybody wants to bring up? Thank you all very much. Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you.
All right, we are adjourned. Cheerio.